Where am I going with this? Oh! Hey! Where's my Guinness? Hello, my name is Quinlan. Welcome to Melbourne Musos Live. And where do I come from? Where the hell do I come from? Oh, well, I come from Carlton. Anyway, as I said, my name's Quinlan, and the name of this show is Where Do I Come From? Where do we come from? You know, that kind of thing. It's semi-autobiographical, but in doing so, I don't want to make it overly so. There's a reason I'm wearing my Channel 31 Community TV t-shirt today, because we're all in it together. We're supposed to be. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is from a drumming point of view, from a musical point of view, just how much I've learnt over the years as far as just being able to research music. One of the big breaks, I did it a few weeks ago, was getting into the technology of it all. So you know, being able to start using the other side of my brain, not just drumming brain, but guitaring brain, orchestrating brain, writing music brain, if there's any brains left. But what happens is that one of the great things that happened to me was getting into the technology of it all. And not just an electronic drum kit. Dear old big-ass Doris here is a hybrid, that kind of thing, in the sense that she's a wonderful little drum kit. Started out fairly just a typical, actually a 7-piece drum kit. Then it turned into this, and then I got the pergola. Then I got, you know, the back shed. Then I got the kitchen sink. And away we went from there. Just, hello. Hello, everyone. How's everybody today? Not too bad, doing all right. Get on with it. Okay, I've been told. So what it is what I'd like to do tonight is sort of, with everything that I've got in front of me, to be able to make a show, 1 week about jazz, 1 week about Dear Rob Hurst, another week about rudiments, another week about something else, you know, sort of thing, reggae, whatever it might be. How do I prepare for it? You do the research. And when I sit down and think about it, when I got these, for instance, anyone else's Octopad or whatever it might be, and triggered. And what I've got here is the Celtic hammered dulcimer sound, you see. And then what happens is that with that, I had to learn how to use it. So therein lays the rudiments, you know, that kind of thing. And then you research the style. If we're going to go Celtic, if you're going to, you know, St. Paddy's Day, chances are you're going to be dancing in 6/8, okay, or in 2/4, okay. And then you've got the slip jig, which is in 9/8. And I've gone, wow, listen to all that. One. Now 9/8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like that. You'd make a great auctioneer, as I say. They get paid better than us. But if you just treat it like triplets in 3/4, 1 and a 2 and a 3, and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, Add to that a Mixolydian mode. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 octave. And next thing you know, someone's buying you a pint of Guinness. And there you go. Research, I tells you, research. Practice, I tells you. And one of the things about Celtic stuff, bringing it back to us as drummers practicing. What do I practice? Well, the double paradiddle reigns supreme. Right, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, right, left, left. Learn to move it around. There you go. Now I'm going to move on because why are we here? Because what happens when I'm doing shows like this? I've just done a little snippet of Celtic, but what happens if I do something else? Like if I change things up, I put these down, I pick these up, put the snares on, and I change my patch. People seem to like my dub horn patch here. A blues scale in C. Pentatonic, where does the blues come from? Well, here's a tale I need to tell. Where do we come from? Well, when you're doing a 12-bar blues, you are dealing with a fairly sad history of slavery. And then what would happen is that you would have slave traders plundering Africa, 16th, 17th, 18th century. And essentially the main trading port was bring them back to Cuba. And, you know, basically an auction. And look at the teeth, look at this, look at that. Does she have childbearing hips, you know, that kind of thing. Where do we come from? Well, the slaves that were bought to go up to the southern states of a young America, they started a thing called gospel blues, and we know it as a good old 12-bar blues. I woke up this morning. And they were forbidden to do any kind of rhythms or play any kind of drums because the plantation owners would be thinking they'd be sending messages with their drumming. It was right, they did. So all they could do was sing while they were picking cotton and every other kind of... Do we need to go there? Anyway, the slaves who were bought and went south down to Brazil and South America were allowed to keep their instruments. And then what would happen is that I'll just take the patches out for a second. And then, no such thing as a snare drum for them. And then you get lots of different things like, you know, so. Bossa novas and all sorts of things came from the 3-2 clave, which I have mentioned so often. Do I need? No, I don't need to. You know it. And there it is. If not, find out. There it is. Bossa nova comes from that. Everything else, albeit Bossa Nova means new rhythm by Antonio Carlos Jobim, about 1959, but it comes from one of the backbone rhythms of Africa, coming out of that. Cuba, North, blues, Cuba, South, slaves, Latin rhythms. One of the big things, I just mentioned the double paradiddle. There's your double paradiddle. notes, I'm just playing. Now we have the African bell pattern. It's usually a cowbell. Here's the bell of a cymbal, but if I do this, I've got a fairly low African drum here. Okay, think of the drummers of Burundi with hollowed out logs with an inkaranya as far as the big drum in the middle, the ceremonial drum. And like I said last episode, that sound on the rim is a little bit like hitting the side of the inkaranya, right? And then I have a form of a bembe pattern, right? Bembe, B-E-M-B-E with a little pst there, bembe. And what happens though is that if I go all the way back to Celtic, which I started the show with, next thing I know, what have I got? I've got a bowron, okay. Rocky road to Dublin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, da, 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 da. Could go on forever, but I won't. Thank God, they say. And anyway, what goes on is next thing I know, we've got Africa. What have I done so far? I've done the blues, Latin. I haven't done jazz yet. I've got Celtic. There you go. I'm looking at my cheat notes here. But what happens if I take that and go somewhere else? Now, one of the big things about blues and me using the blues scale for the dub horns and so on, we are dealing with a form of a pentatonic scale, which is the most used scale in the world. Most people think it's the C major scale or just a general do, re, mi kind of thing. But when you take in countries and continents such as Africa, China, all the different aspects, you take in popular music, which is built on the pentatonic, which is the first, if you do, it depends on which one you're doing, major or minor, but if you're doing the minor one for blues, it's the first, flat third, fourth, fifth, and flat seven, and I've got a splinter from my stick and octave. And then what goes on with that? I woke up this morning. But then you start to do things that are from different areas. And one of the areas that is very close to us Australians is Southeast Asia. And then, so I am now going to go to, if I can find it, the Indonesian Gamelan Orchestra, which is what I've got here on the patches. And for this, I am going to go to what is known as a P-log scale, and I'm just going to hit the rims. Take the snares out, Chris. There's no snares in gamelan. P-log, many different forms. For this one, essentially, I have to look. I've got to take my glasses off. I'm getting old. G, A flat, B flat, D, E flat, G. There you go. All right, I'll put it up there for you. styles of music very close to us and very, very much appreciated. When I do studies, as I said from the top of the show, I can't very well do a cooking show for drummers, Melbourne Musos, and saying, this is a rock beat again, you know, that kind of thing. One of the things that happens to all of us is that when you're going about your daily business, and sometimes we can catch a break. The break for me sometimes came out of adversity. And what I mean by that is that if I throw myself back to the early to mid 1990s, I was just your typical drummer trying to get a gig in Melbourne, you know, that kind of thing. And then I sort of caught a break out of adversity. One of my heroes, Frank Zappa, had a long battle with prostate cancer and finally succumbed to it in the end of '93. A bunch of us Zappa nuts, a lot of whom I hadn't met before, got together. Next thing I know, there's a band called the Zappa Instrumental. It started off band from Utopia, then the Zappa Instrumental, and we went until 2000. And it was wonderful. At the same time, two things happened. That was one, or actually three things happened. Our chief weapon is surprise, fear, and let's do it again. No one expects the Spanish sorry, Monty Python, but anyway, what it is.
Well, I didn't expect a kind of Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
But what it is that happened. Adversity. One of my heroes passed away. It was hard. And then I was in a situation being the local music teacher and teaching in various schools and watching so many schools get closed down because of the government of the day, right? Without it getting political, but everybody remembers something like 360 schools getting closed down around Victoria at the same time as gambling and pokies exploded. Now, that became a vacuum that we still feel today. But at the same time, a fledgling Channel 31 community TV was coming up. And I thought, this is something you can use as far as a cooking show. Throw it out there. Some people will catch it. Some people will say it's bullshit. But most of the time, it's like, geez, thanks for that. I never... And now, I don't know, it's 2026 and I'm talking about a time 32 years ago. And the thing about it is, I still to this day get, I hate paradiddles. I hate them. I just want to rock. Well, did anyone ever know that double paradiddles were rock? Did everyone? Oh dear, I should have listened 20 years on, you know, that kind of thing. So that's catching a break. You just catch a break. And one of the big breaks that I also caught was coming up in Carlton in the 60s when I was the only skippy. I was the only skip. Everyone else was Italian, Greek, Maltese, Libyan, oh my Lord. And essentially post-World War II, you had populate or perish. You know, a lot of people talk about the White Australia policy, but the thing about it is the influx post-World War II and all these people, it was just a melting pot of culture. And it's still with me today because what I can pass on to you is things like this. What the hell am I going to do with them? What's this? Oh, I know what that is. I love it. In the research, you suddenly realise, bloody hell, they don't call it a double paradiddle in Africa, but they sure as hell call it the African bell pattern. And when the slave traders come, all of a sudden we grew up with, oh, this is an Afro-Cuban 6/8. Do you see? And then what happens with that? With just a little slight nuance. But what it is things are connected. We're all connected. It's not like, we're just sort of like one, just us. We've got there's a whole mess of people here, and we love them all, At least we should. What I'm getting at is that all the different things. So, we were talking about blues, and then blues. Jazz. It's not dead. It just smells funny. We had trad jazz, big band jazz, pop, modern, contemporary, which could mean a lot of things, four-way. There you go. I better start wrapping the show up. What have I done? I've done lots of different things. I could talk about Indian culture. I could talk about Spanish culture with flamenco, or that, and then all the different things. I've done a show on everything now 4 or 5 times over the years. But the thing is, what have I talked about? Blues, Latin, jazz, Indonesian gamelan, African, Celtic, and I've just mentioned Indian flamenco. This is what the world gives us. If we isolate ourselves, we think we're so cocky, and and we can't even take care of our own indigenous, because the thing about it is that I'm making this show on Bunurong country, and I want to thank the people who have taken care of Australia for so many thousands and thousands of years. And I'm not ramming it down your throat. I'm just saying we wouldn't be who we are without them. And me growing up in Carlton post-World War II, and then spending more than a decade teaching in and around Footscray with all the Vietnamese boat people and hearing their stories. And then out of the blue, someone rings up and says, can you teach my son lessons? And then you find out they're from Myanmar. And next thing you know, there's a whole clutch of kids who are second generation from people who fled the troubles in Myanmar. They still call it Burma. And then you learn stuff. You learn to shut up and listen. And that's what it is. And with that, one of the things that is so close and dear to me is Channel 31 giving me an opportunity to be able to share this. In the learning, when you learn, you have to listen. And I can't talk without first having listened. And when I sit down and I think, what do I need a double paradiddle for in 1973 with my first lessons with Harold? And suddenly it's in Celtic music, suddenly it's in African music, suddenly it's even in Indonesian gamelan. You're going, wow, we're connected. With that, my name's Chris Quinlan. Melbourne Musos. Melbourne Musos live. And bloody hell, do I need it!